Well, good morning to Trinity United Church Collingwood. This is the fifth Sunday after Pentecost, although we're taping these services ahead of time, and hopefully by now, as you're watching this on that July 5th or thereabouts, that some of the restrictions have been lifted, and maybe some of the things that we used to do, you can start to do again, and hopefully the summer has arrived in a beautiful fashion. And I'm going to continue with our welcome. Welcome to Trinity United Church. We strive to be a safe community for all, regardless of race, creed, age, cultural background, religious affiliation, or sexual orientation. Here, we are all invited guests of God. We acknowledge that for many thousands of years, the indigenous people of Turtle Island walked on this land. We are thankful to share in the special spirit of this place, rich in the energy of Mother Earth and the love of all creation. I'll light the Christ candle, and we're singing Come and Find the Quiet Center today. As we're doing during the summer services, I'm beginning with the psalm, and the psalm I'm reading today is Psalm 45. It's the theme is royalty and God's place, and it says, Dominic Crossan used to say, what would the world look like if God, not Caesar, was in control and on the throne? And so we hear the words that come to us from thousands of years ago. My earth overflows with a noble theme. I utter the song I have made for the King, my tongue like a pen of a ready scribe. You are the fairest, the most handsome. God endows your speech with grace. God has blessed you forever. Gird your sword on your thigh, O hero, in splendor and majesty. In your majesty ride on to conquer in the cause of truth and justice. Let your right hand teach by awesome deeds, arrows sharp in the heart of royal enemies. The nations shall fall at your feet. Your divine throne endures forever. Your royal scepter is righteousness. Your love right and hate what is wrong. Your God has anointed you more with oil of gladness than all of your peers. All your garments are fragrant with myrrh, aloes, and cassia. Out of the ivory palaces, stringed music makes you glad. Amen. The first hymn we're going to sing today, or the next hymn we're going to sing, is 405, New Every Morning. I'm reading from the Old Testament, the Older Testament. It's a prophet we don't often read from, Zechariah. It's one of the 12 minor prophets in the Older Testament. There's at least 2 authors that have contributed to this writing. It dates to around the 5th or 6th century, and scholars have agreed that the nature of the language changes dramatically in a couple of places, meaning other authorship. And it's during the restoration of the rebuilding of the Second Temple. So after Cyrus has allowed the Jews to come back to start to rebuild the temple, Zechariah starts to speak. And it's interesting because when you read, or when you hear me read this passage, you'll hear images of the story of Jesus riding into Jerusalem on the donkey. And it's always important to remember that the early Christians, when they wrote the stories of Christ, were borrowing heavily from the images and phrases from the Older Testament to establish Jesus as the Messiah, the one prophesied about in the Older Testament. So when you hear a line that sounds like something we hear in the Newer Testament, it often comes directly from the Older Testament as a way of proof. And the book of Revelation, the prophet Zechariah, there is a very large portion given to the day of the Lord and apocalyptic images and so on. And the book of Revelation also borrowed from this book as well. So listen now to the words, some of which you will hear in other places. Rejoice greatly, O daughter Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter Jerusalem. Lo, your king comes to you. Triumphant and victorious is he, humble and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. He will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the war horse from Jerusalem, and the battle bow shall be cut off, so he shall command peace to the nations. His dominion shall be from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. As for you also, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will set your prisoners free from the pit. Return to your stronghold, O prisoners of hope. Today, I declare, I will restore to you double. The word and story. Amen. I'm going to sing another hymn, 344, How Sweet the Name of Jesus Sounds.
And drives away the epistle reading Romans, chapter 7, verses 15 to 25. In fact, I don't understand why I act the way I do. I don't do what I know is right. I do the things I hate. Although I don't do what I know is right, I agree that the law is good. So I am not the only one doing these evil things. The sin that lives in me is what does them. I know that my selfish desires won't let me do anything that is good. Even when I want to do right, I cannot. Instead of doing what I know is right, I do wrong. And so, if I don't do what I know is right, I am no longer the one doing these evil things. The sin that lives in me is what does them. The law that has shown me that something in me keeps me from doing what I know is right. With my whole heart, I agree with the law of God. But in every part of me, I discover something fighting against my mind, and it makes me a prisoner of sin that controls everything I do. What a miserable person I am. Who will rescue me from this body that is doomed to die? Thank God, Jesus Christ will rescue me. So with my mind, I serve the law of God, although my selfish desires makes me serve the law of sin. Our second reading this morning is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11, verses 16 to 19, then 25 to 30. You people are like children, sitting in the market and shouting to each other. We played the flute, but you would not dance. We sang a funeral song, but you would not mourn. John the Baptist did not go around eating and drinking, and you said, that man has a demon in him. But the Son of Man goes around eating and drinking, and you say, that man eats and drinks too much. He is even a friend of tax collectors and sinners, yet wisdom is shown to be right by what it does. At that moment, Jesus said, my Father, Lord of heaven and earth, I am grateful that you hid all this from wise and educated people and showed it to ordinary people. Yes, Father, that is what pleased you. My Father has given me everything, and he is the only one who knows the Son. The only one who truly knows the Father is the Son, but the Son wants to tell others about the Father so that they can know him too. If you are tired from carrying heavy burdens, come to me and I will give you rest. Take the yoke I give you, put it on your shoulders and learn from me. I am gentle and humble, and you will find rest. This yoke is easy to bear, and this burden is light. Praise be to God.
Against Jesus and his followers is they loved to party, and it's an interesting juxtaposition as now we think of church people as least likely to enjoy a party, but in the early stories Jesus was accused of being a wine bibbler and a glutton, and it was just a harsh criticism because his disciples, and he ended up at places like wedding feasts, and they didn't practice all of the strict rules that kept them from fellowship, table fellowship with other people. So anyway, interesting to hear that passage. We're going to hear now from a soloist. Martha Rogers is going to sing a solo.
I'm Martha Rogers, and I'm here to sing Make a Joyful Noise that was written by Sally Albrecht.
Excelsis Deo, Gloria in excelsis Deo, Gloria, Gloria Deo. Make a joyful noise to the ends of the earth. Make a joyful noise to the ends of the earth. hands. Make the music and sound the cymbals. Sing, dance, and clap your hands. Let the earth resound. Let the earth resound. Make a joyful noise to the ends of the earth. Make a joyful noise to the ends of the earth. All the earth. Sing, dance, and clap your hands. Sing and clap your hands. Sing, dance, and clap your hands. Sing and clap your hands. Sing, dance, and clap your hands. Sing, dance, and clap your hands. Sing, dance, and clap your hands. Loud the trumpet and sound the cymbals. Sing, dance, and clap your hands. Let the earth resound. Let the earth resound. Make a joyful noise to the ends of the earth. Make a joyful noise to the ends of the earth. Gloria, Gloria, Deo.
As you know, the pandemic has provided us the opportunity to change how we worship and how we share our worship experience. And over the course of the past 2 or 3 months, I've had the chance to talk about hymns. I've talked about the music. I've talked about a month ago, I spent a brief time talking about imagery of God as portrayed in our hymns and in our church music. And today I'm going to go in another different direction in a very general sense. But to set the stage first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own upbringing and my career as a church musician. Many of you may know that I'm the son of a United Church minister. I'm a preacher's kid. And from about the age of 15, I started to become a part-time church musician. And then in my mid-20s, I became, in a sense, a full-time church musician every week with a choir and so on. And over the course of my almost 40 years of being a church musician in a more or less full-time sense, I've been in 7 churches, mostly United. I've done a stint in an Anglican church and in a Presbyterian church, but I've always felt home in the United Church. What I want to talk about today is an answer to the question that I've heard through my entire life. First, often from my peer group as I was a teenager, and then often over the course of the decades I've spent being a church musician. And here's the question, or a variation. Why don't we have modern or contemporary music in church that the youth can relate to? Because the implication of that question is what music in the church that we have is old, irrelevant, out of date, youth can't connect to. So there's a lot to unpack there. And so I'm going to start with what I refer to as a few truisms about music, about church, about what people, or rather about what compels people to attend church and the role that music plays in that. And I'll add a caveat. While I might refer to them as truisms, they're actually personal opinions based on my experience, both within the church and outside the church, because many of the people who I am friends with and have known all my life aren't necessarily churchgoers. So here we go. Number 1, when it comes to music, people like what they know and they know what they like. So I'm going to translate that a bit. Embracing new or different forms of music or musical expression is not something that we humans are eager to do, and in fact, we often resist it. And from a personal perspective, as much as I listen to country music, I don't seem to be able to ever get a sense of actually enjoying it. In the church context, we see it in church. I've seen the reaction, for example, by congregants who have become accustomed over their lifetime to in the context of their worship experience, sing 3 or 4 hymns, accompanied by an organ, sometimes by piano. And then they've been suddenly exposed to a praise band. Now, for those of you that don't know what a praise band is, generally speaking, a group of singers and musicians where the singers sing into microphones. The musicians are usually a keyboardist, a guitarist or two, percussion, and they sing the songs in unison. And often the songs are portrayed on a screen or a PowerPoint, and the congregation sings along with the praise band. And the praise band often will gesticulate with their hands in the air and things like that. So for congregants who are used to what I would refer to as a traditional type of service, such as we have here at Trinity United, that's very jarring, to say the least. On the other hand, I've also seen the reaction of unchurched young adults who come into a traditional setting with the 3 or 4 hymns, accompanied by the organ, and they're confused, bewildered, maybe curious, but it's the same thing. It's something they're very unfamiliar with. Number 2, music is not the primary reason. In fact, I don't think it's in the top 5, if I could say that people elect to attend church. It is certainly not the reason why youth will or will not attend church. Number 3, on the heels of that, however, music is a significant factor as to which church a person elects to worship in. Number 4, once a person becomes a regular church attender, music is a very important part of the worship experience, and in fact, it becomes inseparable from the worship experience, the word and the music together. Number 5, every hymn, without exception, was once brand new and modern in the context of the era in which it was first originated. And some of the time-tested and well-loved hymns were initially met with indifference, critical reaction, and occasionally hostility. And number 6, there's no consensus to what modern or contemporary music within a church setting really means. Is it the priest in Barrie, for example, who assumes the persona of Elvis? I can assure you that outside of Collingwood, which has the Elvis Festival, today's youth would laugh at anyone who suggested that Elvis is either modern or contemporary. So is it the praise band music that is modern contemporary? Again, I would think that this type of music is not what kids listen to outside of church on a regular basis. So let's examine the question again. Why don't we have contemporary and modern music in church? The answer is we actually do. And we always have. There are new hymns being written all the time. And older hymns, for various reasons, fall out of favor, become theologically out of date. Words, perhaps, are dated. And they've run their course. They disappear. And as new hymn books are compiled, they just don't make the cut. So let me talk about some examples of modern hymns that we use and that we have come to love. For example, We Are Pilgrims, Jesus, Come to the Lakeshore, Lift High the Cross, Let Us Build a Church, There's a Song of Praise, and I, the Lord of Sea and Sky. There's many, many others, but those ones have become very much loved, certainly in the tradition of Trinity United. Which leads me to share with you these thoughts. And again, I'll number them off. Number 1, hymns are made up of 2 fundamental pieces, 2 fundamental components, words and a tune. How they are presented is where the variety comes in. Are they presented as a hymn arranged in 4-part harmony for a choir to sing as an anthem? Is it presented with accompaniment by piano, organ, guitar? Is it presented in a praise band format? That's where the variety can come in. Number 2, there has to be integrity poetically, symbolically, theologically, to both the tune and the words. Now, I acknowledge that that can be very subjective, but a consensus eventually emerges. The wheat does separate from the chaff. And it's illusory, and it's an illusory race, if I could use that expression, to cater to the youth, because there is a lot of chaff, a lot of vapid chaff in some of the contemporary music that we see, particularly in the case of the imagery of some of the words. Number 3, the church must do two seemingly contradictory things. On the one hand, the church is compelled to preserve a tradition and a legacy to honor where we've come and to pass that on to the next generation and the generations that follow. On the other hand, they're also expected to embrace the future and respond to new thinking, new approaches, and new imperatives. Music, on the one hand, can play a very comforting and reassuring role as we pass on the legacy of our history and heritage to the next generation. But we also look to, as we do outside of church, the poets and the artists and the musicians who, through their talent and insight and wisdom and creativity, point to the new future. And they express that through new hymns, new words, new music, as we have always done. Number 4, we worry too much about the youth and the church music connection as to why they do or do not attend church. I think the question about is it music that compels youth to come to church is the wrong question to ask. And number 5, if you think that old church music is a turnoff for youth, then let me share with you my personal experience. I began my teaching career in 1980 in a small town in southwestern Ontario, Mitchell, Ontario, just west of Stratford, and not too far from the Lake Huron coast. And my career started in a high school in the small town, grade 9 to 13 back in the day. And the music program was entirely vocal. There was no band instruments. The only instrument in the school, in fact, was the piano. And I used to teach many aspects of vocal technique and skill. I turned to the hymns. In grade 9, every year, by the end of the first week of grade 9 music, they were singing Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee. What value is using hymns in the school context? Breathing, tuning, balance, singing in harmony, which was a new experience for students in grade 9, particularly with the changing male voice, diction, and singing a cappella. And I would use those hymns not only to instruct those, but I would use it through all the grades to reinforce those techniques. Because I can tell you that to sing hymns well, is a very challenging task, no matter how simple a melody might be. And not to my surprise, maybe to yours, and maybe to the students themselves, but they ended up loving those hymns. In fact, I can tell you that they loved Joyful, Joyful. They loved a hymn that we don't sing very often because it's an evening hymn, The Day Thou Gavest, Lord, Has Ended, the St. Clement tune. Loved that hymn. They loved Let There Be Light, one of the newer hymns in our hymn book. Creating God, We Give You Thanks, another favorite. Abide With Me. Fairest Lord Jesus. Really, really enjoyed those hymns. And they came to love them as much as you and I have come to love them. And why is that? Well, I think one reason is because it's music of enduring value. It transcends the immediate, connects to us universally across generations, across the decades and so on, the expanse of time. But also because they became familiar. They became part of the music that they knew. The takeaway was, yes, they loved the music, but it did nothing to get those youth to go to church. but it would also not be any reason why they would leave a church. So I end where I started. As humans, we like music we know, and we know the music we like. The challenge, as I see it, is to open up the richness of our music heritage to those who are unfamiliar with it, so that it becomes the music that they love, much as my students in Mitchell, Ontario did. And for those of us who are comfortable with what we know, we need to expand our own musical horizons and follow the lead of hymn writers who reflect and interpret for us and with us the contemporary world in which we live, the modern human condition, so that we too learn and know more music.
Oh, man. I think Paul's passion for music and education shines through in everything he does. And I can tell you that the choirs that he leads here in the church and is involved with all benefit from his thorough consideration of what he's doing and how he's doing it. And so we're blessed, and I mean that in every sense of the way, with Paul's ministry here. Music is so thoughtfully presented and prepared. So on behalf of all of us, Paul, thank you very much for sharing your passion with us, as well as your good thoughts about our church music. I invite you to join with me in prayer. So God, we ask you, instill in us music, ways to sing your songs and to sing your grace and praise in ways that are contemporary as well as ancient. Help us echo with the thoughts and hopes of our ancestors, as well as bequeath to those who follow us stories that they can cherish and hold in way of tune and music and poetry and art. All these things change us in ways that verbiage never does. It reaches part of us in our holiest hopes and practices. And we ask your blessing upon us as we grow in your way, as a church that's emerging, even as we speak and pray, and as importantly, held and kept alive. In the name of Christ, we pray these things, and we hold the names of those near and dear in our hearts, in our communities, in prayer and in play and in practice and in tune and in music. We ask your blessing upon us, and we say together the words Jesus taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. As we are doing still apart, as far as I expect we're still apart, people are finding ways of supporting the church, and you can find ways to do that on the website, and we acknowledge those who are doing so. It's an important ministry we carry on, and it's actually been a delightful practice of people who before maybe haven't known Trinity but have joined us online, who are also supporting the church in ways that contribute to our ability to continue these ministries. So we ask God's blessing upon us. Give us hearts that give and ways to give that make a difference. Help us acknowledge and dedicate our lives to things that matter and truly bring peace and justice to the world. In the name of Christ, who leads us in every way. Thanks be to God. Amen. Our closing hymn today is 342, You Servants of God.
God, your Savior, and our worship
One advantage we've had as we've been able to put cameras on Paul as he plays is just to see how gifted and how hard it is to play the organ. He's got his feet going and pulling stops and pushing stops. It's truly a marvel to watch, and I get to see him every week up here. So as we end our service, may the grace of Christ attend us, the love of God surround us, and the Holy Spirit continue to hold us in infinite love. And we're going to sing our commissioning and benediction, Go Now in Peace, together.
Go now in peace, never be afraid. God will go with you each hour of every day. Go now in faith, steadfast, strong, and true. Know God will guide you in all you do. Go now in love and show you believe. Reach out to others so all the world can see. God will be there, watching from above. Go now in peace, in faith, and in love. Amen.
May the peace of Christ be with you. Amen.
Amen.